Yo, YouTube, what up? This video is going to be kind of all over the place and not very well structured because I'm kind of just winging it. I don't have a script or anything or even notes. I'm kind of just hit record and I'm just going to rant about some thoughts from the heart, okay? So this video is going to be about the meta of DBD and also people's feedback towards the devs and a lot of like the complaints that I've seen and how a lot of them are kind of like they're not bad complaints, but I think people are complaining about things the wrong way when in reality there's like a root to the problem that they might not know, if that makes sense. So I feel like, for instance, a big thing that I want to talk about is the fact that so many people dislike MMR. And I think the reason why people dislike MMR is not because good matchmaking is a bad thing, right? I think that's a big thing. I think a lot of people aren't saying like, oh, I want to beat up on babies and having good matchmaking isn't good. So But at the same time, a lot of the feedback that the devs get is just like people adding them on Twitter and saying delete MMR, right? Which is not good feedback. So basically, what I'm going to try to explain is what I think is actually the problem with the game, and what I think is it was killing a lot of people's fun, and what I think should probably be feedback given to the devs so that maybe it can be worked on being changed. So let's talk about it. You can see this Nia that I'm looking at right now looks like a pretty ridiculous build, right? This has pretty much been the meta build of DBD for the past, like 5 years, basically, for Survivor. It hasn't really changed much. I mean, maybe medkits used to not be meta because they used to be a lot weaker. But for the actual perks, I mean, the meta has not changed at all in like 5 years. It's been the exact same perks. And a lot of these perks are extremely frustrating. They're very, very strong, and they're extremely frustrating. So, like, it's a bit of a mix between strength and also just frustrating design. Although I don't think those go hand in hand. I think a perk can be strong without being frustrating. Like, I'd argue a perk like inner healing is pretty damn strong, but not like super frustrating, right? I think inner healing is, as a matter of fact, is I think a good example of a perk that should be the top tier perk. I think inner strength should be one of the strongest perks in the game. If the strongest perks in the game were all balanced in a way where they were around inner strength's level, and then maybe the weaker perks in the game were things like flashbang or things that are a little bit more memey like pebble, right? I think that would be a lot better because right now, there's just such a crazy big difference between having like an actual good meta build of perks and having ones that aren't that good. Like a staggering difference, which I think in itself is bad. I don't think perks should have that much impact on the game. Like, they should obviously help you and they should give you benefits, but like I think like literally getting completely carried by builds to the point where if you don't have those builds you just get completely dumpstered is a little bit nuts. And also, again, the way that they're strong, like the perks in this build are all strong. I mean, some of these like less than others, but they're strong in a way that's really frustrating. I think Dead Hard is the worst one for this, which I'm sure you guys heard me talk about it plenty. But like Dead Hard is such an insanely frustrating perk because you're literally about to get the down as killer, right? Like, say you get like a really good mind game on a survivor, and then you like bait them into a bad position. And you're like, oh, I'm about to get them, and then you're like running up and you're about to hit them, and then they press E. And they get a little bit of distance, and then they make it to a pallet they wouldn't normally make it to, and then they throw the pallet, and you don't get the down, right? Like, you should have gotten the down. You mind gamed them, you played better than them, you should have gotten the down, but then they press E, and then you just don't get the down, and then you have to chase them around for another, what, like 30, 40, 50, 60 seconds, all while their teammates are doing gens, you know? Super frustrating. Super, super frustrating. There's also a lot of times, I mean, like the other one's a lot less so, but even like Unbreakable, I don't even necessarily think Unbreakable is like a super overpowered perk, but like there's a lot of games where I would have won the match if it wasn't for somebody having Unbreakable and getting up and picking up all their teammates, you know? Borrowed Time, I think it's kind of a necessary perk, but also it can be used in ways that are frustrating for killers. And same thing with DS, right? Like, I think both these perks are good to have in the game because of something. I'm going to talk about tunneling later, okay? So if you're like a Survivor player and you're like, don't talk badly about those perks, bear with me, okay? I think the way that these perks are currently used a lot of the time are very frustrating for killers. They just feel like annoying to go against for a lot of killer players, and that's what sucks because here's what's going on, right? When you're having good match-made games, a lot of the times, what's making the difference between you winning and losing are these perks. A lot of times, it doesn't feel like you're losing to the actual skill of the survivors. It feels like you're losing to their perks, you know? Or even like their items. Like medkits are nuts. Like medkits are so OP right now. Like it is insane. Like this medkit will heal you 3 times at like insanely fast speed, right? Like normally to heal, you should have to get another survivor to like leave what they're doing and come heal you for 16 seconds, right? So 2 survivors doing nothing for 16 seconds. It's like 32 seconds of total survivor time because there's 2 people doing it. This will heal you in something like probably like 12 seconds by yourself. So instead of there being 32 seconds, there's 12 seconds every heal. That is a huge benefit. Like, that is a monumentally large time save. Like, an absurdly big time save. They're fucking busted OP. Like, I'm sorry, but medkits are busted OP. It's so ridiculous. And again, like, losing, a lot of the times, I think it's not really the fact that people are losing that makes them frustrated. I think it's the fact that they're losing to this, right? Like, when you lose because of, like, one of these insanely strong perks, it doesn't really feel like you deserve to lost. It felt like you played well, or maybe you even outplayed them, but you just lost because their builds were insane. And also, the way that you fix this, by the way, and I think a big thing that I want people to get out of this video, is that the way that you fix this isn't by buffing weaker perks, because that's something I've seen behavior doing a lot lately. There's been a lot of patch notes lately where, like, things have gotten buffed, right? Like, small game got a minor buff. Like, if we just go through, like, there's a lot of, like, perks that got, like, very minor buffs, which is good. Don't get me wrong. I do like that weaker perks are getting buffs, and I'm not saying they shouldn't do that. Weaker perks should get buffed as well, but no matter how much they buff weaker perks, it's not going to matter until they nerf these perks, right? Like, they have to nerf these perks in order for anything else to matter. Because here's the thing. In order for any perk to actually, like, be usable, like, in order for any, like, Survivor player that cares about winning to actually want to use a perk, it needs to be as good, if not better, than these perks. And the only perks that have really been added, like, in a very long time that really fit that bill is, like, maybe what, like this, right? And fucking look at how well that went. Everyone hates this perk. Like, this is one of the most complained about things in the game, you know? But this is the only perk that has actually, like, shaken up the meta in a long time, because it's one of the only perks that can actually, like, hold up with how strong the other ones are. Like, maybe, like, Deliverance you can say too, but even that was released quite quite a while ago at this point. So, like, I don't know. Like, it's weird because you literally can't fix it until you nerf the high-end perks. And for some reason, behavior just refuses to do it. It's really odd. They keep, like, they'll take perks like Boil Over and make them slightly better. And don't get me wrong, Boil Over is really annoying now, but Boil Over is nowhere near as strong as the other perks, right? Like, they'll keep taking these, like, little perks, like Any Means Necessary got like a nice little buff, which was, like, cool. Any Means Necessary is now a little bit better. But who cares? Because everyone's still going to run these same perks. You know what I mean? You need to nerf the top end down in order for anything else to matter. Nothing else is going to be ran if the top end if the top end doesn't get nerfed. It's really important they do that. It has to happen, and that's the feedback that should be given to the devs. Not that matchmaking sucks. It should be the reason why I lose games is because of the current meta perks being way too strong and being designed in a way that is very frustrating to go against, and that's what makes me frustrated, right? Because I'm assuming anyway. I mean, maybe some people are frustrated for other reasons, but I'm pretty sure that's the majority of reason why most people are frustrated. And now, before Survivor mains get on my shit and be like, oh my god, blah, 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 I want to flip-flop it now too, because I have even more to say about Killer. I have even more than that to say about Killer. Because the same exact thing can be said on Killer side too, right? Let me throw together a build. So builds like these are, like, relatively meta on Killer nowadays, right? They have released Killer's the opposite of Survivor, where, like, Survivor's perk meta hasn't really changed in like 5 years, whereas Killer has got power creeped really hard. Killer meta for perks used to be like chase perks and tracking perks back in the day, but nowadays every Killer build is just like a bunch of slowdown perks. It's like stacking slowdown perks basically. It's like, which 4 slowdown perks do you want to stack? And maybe if you don't throw us like for instance, you'd run something like this, or if you wanted to replace a slowdown perk, you would maybe do something like this, right? You'd keep No Way Out, but then throw in No Ed. So even if they could get gens done quickly, they end up just dying to No Ed, No Way Out anyway, right? And again, No Ed is like really the only non-tracking perk that I would say is like decently meta. Or sorry, the non-slowdown perk. And even this is frustrating in its own way too. I made a whole video about it. If you check my recent discussion videos playlist, I'm sure you can find it. And yeah, it's the same thing, right? It's the same situation. These perks are very frustrating. They're not very fun to go against. It's not very fun as a survivor to constantly have gens being blocked by Dead Man Switch, you know, being regressed, having everything be blocked and slowed down and regressed, and having like the most arguably boring part of the game, which is doing gens, get extended by even longer. It sucks and it doesn't feel great, right? So like, I would love to see the same thing happen for Killer. I would love to see like slowdown perks maybe get a little bit of a nerf. And then also have other perks like tracking and chase perks get a little bit of a buff to be a little bit more, you know, like viable to run without feeling like you're basically throwing games to run them. But I will admit that I think the perk aspect on the killer side is honestly a lot less of a big deal than the survivor side. Like hypothetically, if they didn't touch killer perks at all, I wouldn't really be mad, because like regression and stalling perks are definitely a little bit annoying, but like to me, I don't think they're the end of the world. And maybe that's just because I mostly play killer, but I think it should be addressed, but I don't think it's as important as this other thing that I'm about to get into, because I think the most important thing on the killer side of this aspect is honestly like a base game issue. And that is that right now, people have kind of come to realize over the years in DBD that right now it is pretty much always the correct play if you want to win to camp and tunnel. Specifically tunneling. I shouldn't even say camping. Camping isn't necessarily always the right play, but tunneling is always the right play. And that sucks, dude. Like, that sucks so hard. It's something that I've been avoiding saying for years, because I've known this for years. I've known this since like year 2 of DBD being out, when I realized how effective it was. And I think a lot of people have known about it for years, but a lot of people have just been like trying to not really like spread it, because no one really wants the game to be played that way, right? Like, I would even say that most killers don't want to be forced to play that way. The majority of killer players that tunnel people, they're not doing it like to be assholes. They're doing it because they want to win games, right? And that's a big thing you got to remember too. If you're like a survivor player and you hate being tunneled, if you're like getting frustrated about being tunneled, don't get mad at the killer player. The killer player is just doing what they feel like they have to do to win. And to be honest, the killer player isn't in the wrong. If they want to win, that is their best strategy at doing it, right? If anything, you should be getting upset at behavior that their game is designed in a way where the most effective way to play is also a way that is extremely frustrating and boring to go against. And if any killer players are confused as to why tunneling is boring, allow me to quickly explain. As Survivor, there's kind of like 3 different things that you do, right? You're either doing the objective, you're doing like altruism for your teammates, right? Like unhooking, healing, saving people, or you're getting chased. Those are primarily the 3 things that you do. Maybe there's other things you can do, like chests and stuff, like looting or doing bones or whatever. But usually it's one of those 3 things. I would argue that like doing totems and stuff counts as the objective anyway. So what makes the game fun is like, you know, being able to mix and match all 3, right? Like you get the whole trifecta of gameplay. When hardcore tunneling happens, you're basically only getting 1, right? One person is getting chased over and over again until they're dead. You maybe have one survivor just saving that person temporarily, you know, so that you can allow them to get chased for a little bit longer. And then everybody else just sits on gens the whole time. It basically breaks down this like game that has multiple different flows to it and just breaks it down into just like isolating you into one of them. And then it's just boring. It just sucks to play against. On top of the fact that the person that gets tunneled out also gets screwed over and gets like very little blood points and will like D-rank and lose MMR and all that other jazz. So let's talk about solutions. I don't know a perfect solution, but I'm gonna like just kind of speak freely and maybe get your guys' minds going, okay? So first things first, I think survivors should have a lot more teamwork based in their like wins and losses as well as their blood points, right? In my opinion, if somebody's sitting on the hook, or maybe you could even argue if they're getting chased, I think that survivor should get a percentage of the blood points that every other survivor earns, and I think that should have been in the game like 4 years ago. So I think, for instance, if you get hooked and a killer just sits there and face camps you, you have a choice. You can either kill yourself on hook and get out of the match and go next, which would take like 10 seconds, or you can sit there for 2 minutes and buy your team time and let them get generators done. But for you personally, it doesn't really matter, because you die no matter what. Like the only incentive for you to actually buy time for your team is if you just like want to be good to them and want them to win. But the majority of solo queue players aren't going to give a fuck about their random teammates. Like they're just going to want to go to a next game where they're going to have fun, right? But if hypothetically sitting on the hook was giving you a bunch of blood points, right? Like if you sitting there on the hook gave you like thousands of blood points from all your teammates doing gens and stuff, it might change some people's minds, right? It might actually make people be better teammates because they'll be totally cool with it. Maybe they'll get a pip. You know, like maybe they'll get like enough blood points for like a decent score. And also, I think like people's MMR and like the win condition and stuff should also be based on the total survivors that like escape, as opposed to like, you know, you individually, whether you individually die or not. I think that's something that should have been in the game a long time ago. I think you could even make the argument for being chased, although I think being hooked's a little bit better than being chased, but you can make the argument for that as well. And I think that would be a great change for that one aspect right there. And the second part about tunneling is that I think that they need to design the game in a way where tunneling isn't like, it shouldn't, like, basically killer players that are learning the game shouldn't come to the conclusion by themselves that tunneling is the best play, right? That shouldn't be a thing, because right now that's what's happening. Like, killer players are trying out different strategies, and every single time that killers tunnel, they're finding that they're way more successful than when they don't tunnel. That's just undeniably true. Like, I'm sorry, it just is true. It sucks that it's true, but it is. Like, tunneling just works. It fucking works. It gets you kills. If you get one person out of the match super early, it makes the rest of the match a cakewalk, and it makes it so much easier to win, and it's just undeniably true. And that sucks. Like, I really hate that that's a thing, and I would love it if they found a way to fix it in a way where that wouldn't work anymore. Now, how you actually fix that, I don't know. I have a suggestion that was said to me in stream a while back, and while the suggestion isn't perfect, I'm going to say it anyway to maybe get your guys' mind flowing in a way where maybe you guys can come up with something, and then let me know in the comments, okay? So the suggestion that I'm going to recite is basically, instead of the survivor team having individual hook states for each survivor, right? So, like, if you had, like, a Dwight, a Meg, like, say you had, like, a Dwight, a Meg, a Jake, and a Claudette in your lobby, right? So, instead of, like, each one of these 4 survivors each having, like, 3 hook states each, and if they're out of hook states, they're on death hook, instead, make it so that the entire team of 4 players all has a pool of hook states. Like, say they have, like, I don't know, like 6 or 8 or something. I mean, like, the number can obviously change based on however balance works, right? You can tweak it, obviously. But just say, hypothetically, for this example, let's say it's 8. Say the entire team has 8 hook states, right? And then after 8 hook states are used, every single survivor is now on death hook, right? But it doesn't matter who uses the hook states, right? Like, each person could get hooked 2 times, or Claudette can get hooked 6 times, you know? Or Dwight 4 times and Meg 2 times, right? It doesn't really matter who gets hooked. All that matters is that 6 hook states get used up, and then people are on death hook. So that would make it so that instead of, like, feeling the desire to tunnel one person out, you would feel more like having a desire to just get a lot of hooks quickly, right? Like, having one person on a hook and then throwing another person on a hook actually makes that first hooked person a faster kill, right? Rather than, like, camping them and tunneling them. Like, hooking another person would actually make them die faster. Now, the main issue with this one, and you might already know the main issue. You, like, if you're watching and you're a smart cookie, you might already know the issue with this. The main issue with this is that what most likely would happen is that killer players would end up finding out which survivor player is the weakest, and then they would just hardcore tunnel them, right? Either that, or one teammate would probably, you know, throw the game or something, right? Which is an argument that I've heard, but I would argue that survivors can already do that, right? I think if any survivor player randomly just walks up to the killer and gets themselves killed, or if they just DC, it's basically already throwing the game anyway, right? So I don't really see that being much different. But I think the biggest problem is that killer players would end up just finding the weakest player and then picking on them for free health states until eventually you get to a point where, you know, everyone's on death hook. So even that one maybe isn't the best idea, right? Like, even it has, like, a slight hole in it, but in my opinion, I think it'd still be better than what we have now. At least then you would have an incentive to not just tunnel one person out. You'd have the incentive to get more and more hooks. I think they could even add more to it, right? They could add more, like, anti-tunneling things, right? Like, maybe you have to tunnel, you know, or sorry, like, maybe you have to hook a different survivor. Maybe you get, like, built-in aura reading on whoever unhooks or something. Like, I don't know. Like, you can do some, like, really extreme changes to make it so that, like, the killer has a lot of incentive to, like, chase other people and mix it up and really spread damage and chase multiple survivors at the same time, right? Like, you can really change a lot of things if you really care about it to make it so that as a killer player, you should naturally feel like if you want to win, the best way to do it is not to tunnel and camp, and instead to, like, spread damage, get hooks, play in a way that's a lot more fun, right? So survivors would lose all of their OP bullshit, right? All their, like, OP perks and add-ons and everything get shit on and brought down. And then on killer side, you have a lot more incentive to play fun, and then bam, I think the game is immediately way more fun on both sides. Immediately way more fun on both sides. Because again, just like I said earlier about the MMR thing, I think same thing for survivor players. I think a lot of survivor players hate MMR because so many killers are playing in this, like, really campy and tunnely playstyle because they feel like they have to win, and a lot of people are getting frustrated by it because close games very often get determined by, like, whether a killer has, you know, like really strong perks like Noed, or whether they're like tunneling and camping, and it just ends up not being fun. See, I don't know. I guess that's about it. I think that's about, like, the extent of what I wanted to get off my chest, at least for this video. I have a lot more that I want to say about the game in general, and maybe I'll make some more rant videos soon. Like, I think another big issue with the game is, like, how different high tier killers are from low tier killers, right? Like, the difference between, like, Nurse and, like, Blight, for instance, like like nerfs and blight are miles better than killers like Trapper, you know what I mean, or like Myers, right? Like they are just leaps and bounds above them. So like there's a lot of other issues with the game that I think could be addressed and talked about as well, and maybe I'll make videos on them too. But for now, I want to keep this video solely about this one thing, and it's mostly about the meta of the game, right? Like the current meta as far as perks as well as playstyle. I think it needs to be looked at. I think that is the literal #1 biggest actual complaint about MMR. Again, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. Feel free to let me know if I'm right or wrong about this, because maybe I'm completely off base. I don't know. But from what I've gathered, most people that hate MMR, I usually start to poke them about it, and I ask them what exactly they hate about it, and it seems to always boil back to the same thing. People seem to always hate going against like certain builds and certain playstyles. That seems to always be what bothers them. And I think if it was brought down and made in a way where like the entire game was made more fun, then I think none of this would really be an issue. I don't think anybody would actually have, I shouldn't say anybody, I think very few people would have an issue with having good matchmaking where you get like very closely skilled players together, if it wasn't for the fact that there was all these annoying builds and metas and playstyles that everybody felt like they had to follow to win. So yeah, I don't know. That's it for this video. I'm gonna end it here before I rant too much harder. I feel like I already ranted quite a bit, so I don't want to drag it on any longer than I already have. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Please share your thoughts. I really want to know what people think about this. Am I right? Am I wrong? Do you guys agree? Is there anything else that should be addressed? I know I didn't even really touch on everything meta, right? Like I know survivors have a few meta perks that I didn't even get into. Same thing with killers. There's like a lot of meta things I didn't get into, but you guys get the general feel of what I'm talking about, right? All the high end stuff needs to be brought down so that middle end stuff can be what's viable. And again, you know what, before I even finish, I want to give some more examples of perks that I think should be meta on both sides. Make your choice. Fantastic perk. I'm all ears. Fantastic perk. These perks are strong. Infectious Fright, pretty good, I would say. Even that one's like very strong, but I would say pretty good, right? Like perks that like create a lot of like high action, like fun moments, right? And on Survivor side, again, there's probably so many perks that are like relatively balanced but still fun. I would argue things like even things like botany knowledge are actually decently strong, but people just don't run them because why would you when there's so many other things, right? Like things like botany knowledge and desperate measures being ran together can be really good, you know? Deliverance is another example of a perk that is insanely good, but maybe could be meta, right? Deliverance is a nice perk because it's impossible for all 4 people to get value, right? At least one survivor has to get hooked before anyone can get value at all, and that hooked survivor can't get value out of it. So like even Deliverance, I think, is an example of a strong perk that I think is at least okay, right? I think it's okay to be strong. Deliverance should maybe be the strongest perk in the game, IMO, and then every other perk should be below it, is like what I think. There's like other perks too, like even like a dumb example would be like resilience. Like resilience, even just running resilience alone is pretty strong, right? It's pretty good. Wait, where is it? What is the alphabet? Even resilience alone is pretty good, right? 9% additional speed to repairing, saboing, healing, unhooking, vaulting, cleansing, opening exit gates, everything. Like everything you do is 9% faster when you're injured, which doesn't seem like much, but even just like having that like additional vault speed is really nice, right? It's not like super game changing, gonna make you super frustrated and like change everything about the match, but it's just a nice benefit, right? I don't know. I think if perks like that were like the go-to meta strong perks, and all the other high end stuff got toned down, I think the game would be a lot more enjoyable. Anyway, now I definitely am ranting. Now I'm definitely ranting. I'm gonna get out of here. Thank you guys so much for watching this. If you guys liked it, feel free to give it a like, subscribe if you want as well, and all that jazz. But most importantly, leave your thoughts. This is a video where I definitely want to hear people's thoughts, so please leave a comment. Let me know what you guys think. If you agree or disagree, just let me know. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys have an awesome rest of your night. I'm out of here. See ya. Take care. See ya. See you later. See ya.